People often ask me how all of this began, and the truth is, it wasn't something anyone could have predicted early on. I grew up in a small apartment with just my mother. She worked in insurance, and my life revolved around school and home. Since it was only the two of us, I naturally spent a lot of time observing her and being around her. She wasn't someone others would have called glamorous, but she was always present, always there when I got home. When puberty arrived, it hit me hard and quietly. I didn't really have friends I could talk to about it, so most of what I learned came from overheard conversations and half-understood ideas. We went to church regularly, and that alone earned me a certain reputation at school. I wasn't outspoken or judgmental, but people assumed things anyway. I was small for my age, academically inclined, and painfully shy, an easy combination for attracting unwanted attention. Bullying became part of everyday life, and even though it felt overwhelming at the time, I wasn't alone in experiencing it. Like most adolescents, everything felt intense and final. I talked to my mom about everything. That was our dynamic. I told her about school, about how I felt, about the things that upset me. She listened, comforted me, and did what she could, though there wasn't much either of us could change. For a while, that was simply how things were. One Saturday evening, like many others, we were home together. She had been relaxing and decided to paint her toenails, but it wasn't going well. Polish spilled, her hand wasn't steady, and she grew increasingly annoyed with the process. I was sitting nearby, watching television and occasionally glancing over at her struggle. Eventually, she gave up and asked if I could help. She handed me the remover and polish and rested her foot on my lap. Helping her with small things wasn't unusual. I'd zipped dresses or fetched things before, so it didn't seem strange. I carefully removed the old polish and started over, taking my time and focusing on getting it right. I was detail-oriented even then, and it was easy for me to do. That night turned into a routine. Nearly every Saturday, we'd sit together while I helped her with her nails, talking and watching TV. Sometimes we'd even pick out new colors together during grocery runs. It felt normal and comforting, just another quiet activity we shared. At the beginning of summer vacation, during one of those evenings, she casually suggested something different. While I was cleaning up, she wondered aloud what it would be like if I painted my toenails the same color, just for fun. I stopped what I was doing, genuinely surprised. I told her I didn't think that was something I could do. When she asked why, I hesitated before explaining that I thought it was something only girls did. She laughed gently and said that rules like that weren't as strict as people believed. She framed it as a harmless experiment, something playful and temporary, just between us. The way she said it was light and teasing, very unlike her usual serious demeanor. I was unsure, but her mood was warm and encouraging, and she seemed genuinely relaxed. I finally agreed, but only on the condition that it was just for that night and could be undone the next day if I felt uncomfortable. She agreed easily and reassured me that it was only meant to be fun. So I took off my shoes and socks, and I painted my toenails the same color as hers. We spent the rest of the evening sitting together on the couch, our feet resting side by side. I couldn't help noticing the similarity whenever I looked down. She made a point of comparing them now and then, clearly amused by how closely they matched. It was a surprisingly calm and pleasant night. When it was time for bed, I carried my shoes and socks back to my room and lay awake for a while, thinking about how such a small, unexpected thing had made the evening feel different, like the start of something new, even if I didn't yet understand what that meant. The next morning, I got dressed as usual, and as I pulled on my socks and shoes, I noticed my toes. I assumed my mom would have forgotten about the night before. She hadn't. The moment she saw me, she told me to change into my flip-flops so we could admire our matching toes. She even lifted her foot to show hers off proudly. I stood there for a second, trying to think of an excuse. She urged me to hurry while she finished making breakfast, mentioning that the bacon was already done and the waffles were about to come out. Breakfast was my favorite meal, and this was my favorite version of it, so I didn't argue. I went back to my room, switched into flip-flops, and returned to the kitchen just as the first waffle came off the iron. She made me 2 waffles that morning, and we sat at the table with our feet almost touching. I couldn't stop glancing down at them. While we were eating, she casually suggested that later we could go shopping and pick out some clothes for me, things she thought would be fun to try, along with a few other items for the summer. I hesitated and questioned her, but she brushed it off lightly, saying that it was enjoyable and harmless. She explained that Sundays were quiet, so there wouldn't be many people around, and we could take our time without worrying. She talked about getting a few things for herself too, and then coming home to experiment with different looks. Her excitement was obvious. Even though the idea made me a little uncomfortable, it also felt new and private, something only the 2 of us would share. By the end of that Sunday, she had me dressed the way she liked, with my hair styled differently and my fingernails neatly painted. I looked far more feminine than I ever had before, and she couldn't stop commenting on how much fun she was having. I wasn't entirely sure how I felt about it, but her enthusiasm was contagious, and I went along with it. To my surprise, I actually enjoyed myself. That summer, most of my days were spent wearing clothes from a very different wardrobe than I was used to, and she helped me experiment with simple grooming and presentation. We didn't go out much, and when we did, we were careful. We shopped farther from home and chose quieter stores, so there was little chance of running into anyone we knew. My mom loved every minute of it. I wasn't quite as eager as she was, but I was having a good time too. When summer ended, our dress-up routine slowed down. I told her honestly that I couldn't go to school presenting myself that way, especially with gym class and changing around other students. She agreed that it might be pushing things too far. During the school year, I still helped her with her routine, but I only joined in myself on days off. 8th grade wasn't much easier than 7th. I was still small, and it felt like everyone else had grown twice as fast. The teasing continued, even though my academics stayed strong. In fact, I finished the year with the highest grades in my class of over 400 students, which only seemed to make things worse socially. I complained to my mom often. That year, she opened her own business, and we moved into an apartment behind her office, which put me in a different school district. The following summer, we returned to our daily routine again. This time, I enjoyed it more than before. It no longer felt like something I was doing just to please her. As summer came to an end, I started worrying about attending a new public school, but my mom came up with an alternative. Since she worked in the front office and we lived in the back, she suggested teaching me at home while I helped around the office. At the time, phones were becoming more common but weren't as advanced as they are now. One thing she insisted on was that I learn to sound more polished and gentle when answering calls. I wasn't convinced it would work, but she bought a small tape recorder so I could practice. With repetition, it became easier than I expected, and eventually I could answer the phone confidently using the name Gwen. Before starting, I took a series of placement tests and scored at a college freshman level. After that, I was given coursework I could complete independently. Around the same time, my mom closed her first major deal, so my days were split between studying and helping manage calls and messages at the office. School went smoothly. I passed all the required evaluations, and our curriculum met state requirements without trouble. Testing had always been one of my strengths, and the structured program worked well for me. My main responsibility was answering the phone, and that quickly became routine. I spent more and more time at the office, keeping up with school while continuing the way I'd been living during summers. Without the daily stress of school bullying, life felt lighter, and I actually looked forward to getting ready each morning. The business continued to grow. My mom was excellent at sales, but paperwork and scheduling were starting to slow her down. One Saturday, she sat me down and explained that she needed more help. She smiled at me and said that things had reached a point where she really needed a full-time assistant and that she already had someone in mind. At that point, I was still wearing subtle polish on my toenails and dressing in a fairly androgynous, casual style, comfortable clothes that didn't draw much attention. My mom smiled thoughtfully and said she had someone in mind for the role she needed filled. I was surprised and immediately told her I didn't think I could do it. She dismissed my hesitation gently, explaining that with a few changes, updating my wardrobe, working on posture and confidence, and learning how to present myself professionally, I could easily take on the position. She reminded me that I already knew the business inside and out, had been answering phones from the beginning, and understood how the office worked. She trusted me completely and believed it would be a positive experience for both of us. She talked enthusiastically about polished outfits, well-groomed hair, and learning to carry myself with confidence, presenting it as a kind of professional transformation rather than anything else. I pushed back, saying I wasn't comfortable with taking things too far. She reassured me that everything she was suggesting was reversible and optional, framed around professional presentation and self-confidence. She talked about enjoying nice clothes, good shoes, and regular salon visits, emphasizing how much better I might feel once I was fully comfortable in that role. When I looked at her, I realized she was completely serious. I didn't know how to respond. She encouraged me again, telling me it would mean a lot to her and reminding me how well we worked together. As the business continued to grow, the topic came up again. Just before my 18th birthday, she sat me down and explained that the agency truly needed a full-time receptionist and assistant. Things had reached a point where delaying any longer wasn't practical. I must have looked resistant, because she calmly pointed out that I shouldn't let fear of change stop me from taking an opportunity that suited me so well. I protested, reminding her that I was her child and that this felt like a big shift. She responded thoughtfully, saying that for most of my life, I'd struggled to fit into expectations that didn't make me happy. She pointed out that since I'd been allowed more freedom in how I dressed and expressed myself, I'd been more confident and at ease. She said that seeing me comfortable and content mattered more to her than labels, and that she believed I'd continue to thrive if I leaned into what made me feel good about myself. From her perspective, the changes she was suggesting weren't drastic, they were a continuation of what had already been working. I hesitated, but my resistance weakened. My mom had always been persuasive, especially when she believed in something. She talked about how valuable I'd be to the agency, even mentioning that if things went well, it would make sense for the business to provide practical perks like a company car for errands and visibility. She described it all in terms of professionalism and growth. I was stunned by how far she was willing to go to support me. I actually took time to think about it. Compared to everything we'd already navigated together, this didn't feel like such a leap. Looking back, she wasn't wrong, we had both become more balanced and happier as life had shifted. For the first time, I considered that maybe embracing a different version of myself wasn't something to fear. Once I agreed, we moved forward carefully and deliberately. There were appointments focused on general health, confidence, and presentation, nothing rushed or extreme. Over time, with grooming, tailored clothing, and professional coaching, I felt better than I ever had. My confidence grew, and I finally felt comfortable in my own skin. To celebrate, my mom treated me to a full day of self-care, basic grooming, skincare, a fresh haircut, and ongoing maintenance appointments that helped me feel put together and confident. I left feeling lighter, happier, and genuinely proud of how I looked. When we later visited a dealership to finalize a car for business use, I noticed how differently people treated me, and while some attention was awkward, my mom stayed focused and unbothered. The car itself was practical, stylish, and perfect for the agency. I loved driving it, and it felt like a symbol of how much my life had changed. For the first time, I wasn't just getting by, I was thriving. If you appreciated this story and wish to show your support, don't forget to join me on Patreon for exclusive content,